I don't know why I chose Hollow Ridge. Maybe it was the desperation for peace after everything that had happened. Or maybe I was just too naive to understand the warnings, the whispers that haunted my every step. It's funny how easily people dismiss what they don't understand. They speak of haunted places like they're mere folklore, a collection of ghost stories spun around campfires to make people shiver with excitement. But Hollow Ridge? Hollow Ridge isn't a story. It's a reality. I can't even remember when I first laid eyes on the house. It was almost as if it had always been there, waiting for me. It was an old Victorian mansion on the edge of town, surrounded by thick trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. No one had lived there for decades, or so I was told. In fact, the house seemed to call to me, like some invisible force pulling me toward its decaying grandeur. The agent who showed me the property didn't seem to care much about it. He was a nervous man, his eyes darting as though he could feel something in the air too. Something thick and heavy that he couldn't explain. He just handed me the keys with a smile that didn't reach his eyes and left without a word. At first, things seemed almost normal. The house had a strange, unsettling charm to it. Dusty old furniture covered with white sheets, mirrors that seemed too pristine in their antique frames, walls lined with faded wallpaper that had once been vibrant. The kitchen had the smell of mothballs and neglect, but it was livable. I figured I could clean it up, make it mine. But something about the house felt wrong. It felt like the air was thicker, like it resisted my very presence, like it didn't want me here. I'd walk from room to room and the silence would feel so deep, so oppressive, that it almost felt like I was intruding in a space where I didn't belong. The windows, despite being old and cracked, would let in little light. The floors groaned under my weight, as if the house itself was waking up every time I moved. I thought I was just being paranoid, but that feeling never went away. The first night, I couldn't sleep. The air was too cold, and every creak of the house made my heart race. I heard footsteps echoing in the halls, slow and deliberate, but when I went to investigate, there was no one there. Just silence. That was the first time I truly felt it. That sense of being watched, like something unseen was lurking just out of view, waiting for me to make the wrong move. By the second night, I'd started to notice strange things. Small things at first, easy to dismiss. A book missing from the shelf, a picture frame shifted slightly on the wall. The lights flickered occasionally, but I told myself that was just old wiring. I was alone in the house after all. Maybe it was just the isolation, the feeling of being cut off from everything. But then the whispers began. I was sitting in the living room one evening, reading a book to pass the time, when I heard it. A faint whisper. It came from behind me, so soft that I thought it was just the wind. But then it came again, closer this time, and it sounded like a voice, too low to understand, just out of reach. My heart skipped a beat, and I stood up, spinning around, but there was no one there. I figured I was just being paranoid. Maybe it was the house settling, or maybe I was losing my mind. I'd been through a lot in the past few months, and perhaps the weight of everything was finally catching up with me. But that night, as I tried to fall asleep, the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, sharper, until I could hear them clearly, hissing words in a language I didn't understand. I couldn't make out the syllables, but they sounded so wrong, like something ancient, something evil. They filled the room, closing in around me until I couldn't breathe, until I thought I might suffocate on the sound of them. And then, they stopped. The silence was worse than the whispers. I barely slept that night, tossing and turning in my bed, covered in cold sweat. I could feel something watching me, though I couldn't see anything. Every time I closed my eyes, the shadows behind my eyelids seemed to grow larger, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed almost alive. When I woke up the next morning, I found scratches on my arms, deep, jagged marks that hadn't been there the night before. By the third day, I knew I couldn't stay. But I couldn't leave either. It was like something had taken hold of me. I felt drawn to the house in a way I couldn't explain, like it was pulling me in deeper, like it wanted me there. My footsteps grew slower, heavier, as if the house was sucking the strength out of me. I tried to leave, but the door wouldn't open. It was like the house had locked me in. I remember sitting in the dining room staring at the cracked wooden table, trying to figure out what was happening. The walls seemed to pulse, the house breathing around me. And then I heard it. Again, that whisper. But this time it wasn't in my head. It was outside the door, soft and insistent. Come to the attic. I don't know what made me listen. Maybe it was the lack of options, the feeling of helplessness that had started to consume me. I had to know. I had to see it. So I went to the stairs that led up to the attic. The door creaked as I opened it, and the air in the attic was so cold it took my breath away. The attic was dark, save for the faint glow from a single light bulb hanging in the center of the room. And there, in the far corner, was an old mirror. It wasn't anything special, just an antique, tarnished with age. But as soon as I laid eyes on it, I knew it was important. It was the source. The whispers grew louder as I approached it. They filled my ears, drowning out everything else until the words were all I could hear, all I could focus on. Look into the mirror, they said. See what's inside. I should have run. I should have turned and left, but something in me, something dark, urged me forward. I reached for the mirror, and as my fingers touched its cool surface, everything changed. The reflection wasn't mine. At first, it was just a faint distortion, a blur of shadows that seemed to shift and writhe in the glass. But then, I saw it. Something standing just behind me. It was a figure, tall and skeletal, its face a mask of hollow eyes and gaping black holes, its mouth stretched wide in a grin that shouldn't exist. And then, it moved. Slowly at first, but then it came closer, its hands reaching out to me, through the glass, through the mirror. I screamed and stumbled back, but the figure in the mirror didn't stop. It pressed its face to the glass, its eyes widening, growing darker, deeper. The house seemed to groan around me as if it was alive, as if it was feeding on my fear, growing stronger with every passing second. And then it reached through the mirror. I ran. I don't remember much of what happened next. The house seemed to twist, the walls narrowing, the air thick with something foul. I tried to leave, tried to break out of the house, but the doors wouldn't open. The windows were sealed shut, and every time I turned around, the thing was closer. I could feel its cold breath on my neck, hear its ragged breathing in my ear. I don't know how long I was trapped. Hours? Days? It didn't matter anymore. I could hear the whispers, always there, always calling me, urging me to come back. And when I looked into the mirror again, it was there, waiting for me. I don't know how I escaped, but I'm telling you this now because you need to understand. The house on Hollow Ridge is alive, and it wants you. It will never let you leave once you enter. You'll hear the whispers, see the figure in the mirror, and just when you think you've gotten away, it will pull you back. So please, don't go to Hollow Ridge. Stay away. Once it gets you, there's no escape.